Good evening, everybody. Tonight, I'm sharing a conversation with one of the most profound men I've ever spoken to. The way he can so eloquently articulate the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of his life is truly mesmerising. Please enjoy this conversation with Keyvan Dorostkar in an episode I've called Mastering the Art of Gratitude. A little bit about who you are and what you do.
If we're truly lawyers, I'm a nerd.
Wasn't very planned.
Who are you?
That's a big question, Zach.
Put this in the too hard basket. I swear a bit.
Why do you think everybody hates lawyers?
Lawyers out there, if you're listening,
There's no work-life balance.
I have faith.
And we're joined by a very special guest. He is completing his PhD at the University of New South Wales while also being a professor at that very same university. Please welcome Keyvan.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with forefront of my mind. Let's start with the PhD. So you're studying a PhD at UNSW. I believe it's in immigration law. Is that correct?
Refugee law.
Refugee law, more
but yes.
specifically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's jump at that as a sort of foundation. Can you sort of explain to me the distinction between immigration and refugee law? Because I guess from a layman's perspective, they kind of sound kind of similar.
And I think they overlap. If we can think about immigration law being the broader area, it encompasses essentially the pieces of legislation and policy that regulate how people essentially arrive and stay in Australia and what those conditions are. Refugee law is a subset of that. It relates to people that are seeking protection in Australia. Immigration law, to give you an example, encompasses student visas, people coming to Australia on holidays, for business, all of it. It encompasses all of it, including refugee law. Refugee law is just relating to a specific cohort of individuals that are arriving here seeking protection from Australia. So immigration law is essentially, you can think of it as an umbrella term that incorporates everything, and refugee law is that subset.
Okay, so within refugee law then, now that we have a surface level understanding at the very least, what is your PhD on? What are you examining?
Absolutely, that's a great question. Those that come to Australia seeking protection from harm have to go through a process. There is an application in which they lodge, explaining the reasons why they are seeking protection in Australia, and there are some conditions that need to be satisfied before they are granted a protection visa. And there is a legal process. What my PhD is researching is trying to really understand how this process operates, and the length of time and the efficiency and fairness of these processes, using data and statistics to analyze it. So essentially, we have a process, we have data and statistics regarding people that have gone through this process. The PhD is essentially conducting and collecting this data and analyzing it to understand the duration of these procedures, how long are they taking, what are some of the issues that are reoccurring, and whether we can increase their efficiency and timeliness.
So I'm sure your thesis sort of touches on this, but Australia does kind of have a notoriously difficult immigration and refugee procedure to bypass. Is that a fair summation?
There are many different components of Australia's response to people that seek protection, and some of it has been rightly criticised by various organisations, various human rights organisations. Our offshore processing regime has been criticised, quite rightly in my view at least, for its inhumane treatment. And there are elements of our refugee laws and policies that are inhumane in that regard. And what I'm specifically looking at, though, is a very small, or I guess a very distinct component of it, is these procedures of how these cases and these applications are decided and how they're operating. And you're right, going back to your original question, this is quite complex. It is quite bureaucratic. Anecdotal evidence shows that people on average can be waiting up to at least 7 years, and even all the way up to 11 years to go through this entire process. That gives you an idea of just the level of potential inefficiencies that we can see in the system. And I guess, to reframe it in a positive way, room for how we can improve the system as well.
Mm-hmm. Focusing in on your thesis, is there anything in particular you came across during your research that you maybe weren't looking for, or you were surprised to come across? Is there anything that in particular that jumps out?
Definitely. I think the overarching surprising element, or an element that is missing and desperately needed when it comes to discussions of policy design in refugee law, is evidence. An evidence-based approach to decision-making about how we design these procedures, and an evidence-based approach in how we evaluate how these procedures are operating. What is surprising, or what is really needed in this space is, for example, some of the statistical work that I'm conducting now, gathering data and really understanding how the system works, and really feeding that information, that empirical evidence, back into the decisions we make about how to set up these legal infrastructures. That's been missing to date, and it's not just an Australia issue. I think many other countries around the world are in a similar position, where decisions about how these policies and how these laws operate are made without actual empirical foundation or basis to them. So my thesis really challenges some of these policies. There are assumptions built into these laws and policies that are implemented about how they operate and why they are needed. What this thesis really does is takes a step back and says, okay, if that is the objective of your laws and policies, have they actually fulfilled the purposes you promised that they would fulfill? And if not, why have these policies failed? Where has it gone wrong? What are the lessons we can learn? And gathering real objective, I mean, nothing is ever truly objective, but gathering empirical evidence and really relaying that information back.
So zooming out a little bit on refugee law, this is where your thesis is. You would hope anyone studying a PhD has a certain amount of passion vested in the topic they chose. Where did your inspiration come from for wanting to deep dive into refugee law?
Oh, there's so many different areas, I think. And should we start from the very beginning of this?
Let's do it. Let's start from the top.
I think it would, I wouldn't do the story justice if I didn't tell you that I was an immigrant myself, and from an immigrant family from Iran, and I migrated to Australia at the age of 7. And a question that I grappled with growing up was, why me? Why did I get this opportunity? Why do I get all these privileges? And I'm very cognizant that family, friends, or just other people generally that I'm well aware of don't get the same opportunities. And I want to be clear that it's not, and I'm not feeding into this trope of the grateful migrant that I'm so grateful to be here. Of course, there is deep gratitude, like anyone else. But yeah, this was a personal question that I was grappling with. But at the end of the day, I sort of realized that there is really no clear answer of why. There is no real clear answer, for example, yourself, Zach, of why you and I are sitting here. These are chance, 1 in a million, 1 in a billion odd chance of this occurring. The better question to ask, and the more productive question to ask, is, well, what are you going to do with it? And that really, grappling with the question of what, as I was growing up in my teens, led me to think that you need to use these opportunities, use the education that you have, and be of service. If you can lift someone else, if you can help someone else, one other person, in whatever situation they're in, that is worthwhile doing, and that is at least what I should try to do with my life.
I also just want to jump in and say that's such a young age, from 7 years old, around that time, to be grappling with these kind of existential questions of why me? Did I deserve this? They're very big questions. A lot of us never really find an answer throughout our whole life, let alone to have to be dealing with it at that age.
It's safe to say I was a weird kid. And really, so from thinking about these questions, not only at the age of 7, but in my teens, in those high school years, what naturally ended up happening for me was coupling that question of, well, you want to be of service. Well, let's get more specific. Or what is it exactly that you're going to do? And I matched that with subjects and topics that I was naturally interested in, the humanities, histories. And when I coupled those elements to it, I naturally landed in studying law and a Bachelor of Arts majoring in international relations. These were natural subjects that I was already interested in and quite enjoyed studying. And it was always with the view, like even at university from day dot, was you're going to use this education, still figuring it out, still trying things. Of course, no one has a clear pathway of where life takes them or what opportunities arise. But the North Star was always this purpose of translating education into service. And so that's sort of been the general trajectory of how I've ended up here. But of course, there's been many deviations and side quests along the way.
On the topic of that North Star you mentioned, was there a moment in your, whether it be childhood or as a teenager, when you sort of clicked and realized that law is probably going to be the avenue I'd like to take?
I never wanted to vocalize that I wanted to do law, if I'm being honest.
Can we dig into that? Why do you think that was?
Because there is a degree of prestige, there is a degree of exclusivity that comes with both practicing the law from an outsider's perspective and studying law. And so I didn't think that studying the law was achievable for me. And even during my law degree, I never thought that this was going to eventuate into a career for me either. Imposter syndrome was definitely a real experience for me. But the reality was, when these feelings arose, I went back to the question of, well, what is it that you're going to do about it? And when I think these questions are quite internal and you place yourself at the center of these, of like, I don't belong here, or I don't deserve this. It's all about the I. But when you reshift that focus of how is this going to serve people? How are you going to use this to assist others? Then it's no longer about you anymore. You owe it to the people that you're going to help to take this opportunity with both hands. Whether you belong here or not is not a question for you to answer. Someone has decided that you belong here. It's about grappling, taking that with both hands and really running with it. And I think that connects back nicely into the original question that I had of why me? Why am I in Australia? I think there's that question is still coming back of, oh, I don't belong here, or this is an opportunity that doesn't belong to me. I think those questions don't serve you. But when you start thinking about how you can help others do it, how you can help others in their circumstances, then these questions sort of fade away into the background, because all you're focusing about is maximizing the opportunity that you have in front of you, and ultimately, and coincidentally, that also benefits yourself as well. Of course, it's not all altruistic, as much as I'd like to think it is. It really isn't as well.
I also think that it's almost a pessimistic stance to think that self-interest and altruism are mutually exclusive.
Yes.
I think that's really pessimistic. I like to think that the more we can help others, the more we will benefit ourselves. If that's not the case, at least I wish that would be the case.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you there, Zach.
On the point of sort of acting in the service of others, this being quite an inspiration for you to sort of focus on refugee law. Was that a similar reasoning behind your pivot into academia and wanting to study on the one hand, but also teach?
Teaching, I was really passionate about for two reasons. First, I was a beneficiary of excellent mentors that have shaped the way that I think, and excellent educators that have shaped who I am. And these people helped me and engaged with me at a time where there was really nothing in it for them. It was purely out of a desire to help someone else, and I stand on the shoulders of these great giants, and I'm forever grateful for that. But I could never repay these people for what they did for me. And for me, it's like, well, how can I pay it forward? How can I be that person for someone else, or how can I do that? And the second reason, or the flip side of that, is I had some terrible educators in law school as well. And I would always sit in those classes thinking, damn, if I ever got up at the front of that class, I would do things differently. I always remembered there was this one lecturer that walked in class 1 and said, I don't care who you are, I'm never going to learn your names, could not care less. And I thought, wow, I feel really small in this moment right now. From this day on, I'm going to make sure I'm going to remember every single person's name, because like, I know what it feels like to feel small, and he just made everyone feel so small. So if I ever get a chance to stand up there, I'm going to make sure I remember people's names. So I learnt by emulating people that I looked up to, but at the same time, I believe that every person can teach you something. Even if you don't agree with that person, if you sit there and ponder why you don't agree with that person's actions or behavior, you can also do the exact opposite and make sure you don't fall into the same mistakes or same patterns of behavior that you don't fully appreciate as well. So that was a core driver for that. Secondly, I do have an agenda with teaching. I think there is a responsibility with studying law, practicing law, to instill these values and shape a legal culture that you want to see out in the world as well. It's easy enough for us to point fingers or point out issues in the law, but if we're not actively helping change that in a meaningful way, then all we're doing is just complaining about it. So you get the privilege of standing in front of people that are there to learn, that are there to understand and genuinely improve, and there is a responsibility to impart at least some of the wisdom or some of the knowledge that I've been grateful to accumulate and pay that forward. And if I can get only one student or one person to care about refugee issues or human rights issues or social justice, that has ongoing ripple effects. And I believe all it needs is one person, and you never know what you say or how you say it can shift or change someone's mind.
I really resonated with appreciating the experience of the poor practitioners, the bad teachers you had, because so much of figuring out who we are and what we want to do is that process of elimination. It's recognizing that I don't exactly know what I am, but I know I'm not that. On the flip side of that, on the good teachers, you mentioned that all it takes is one moment and it can sort of pivot you in a more positive direction. Was there one particular lesson or something that a teacher taught you that really resonated with you in that moment?
Yeah, I walked into who is now my supervisor, and I've been working with them for over 6 years. But as an undergraduate law student, I walked into their office wanting to do an honors program, which is like a research year where you go away and you do a mini research project and are awarded an honors in addition to your degree. I walked into his office and I said, look, I want to do a research project that matters, that makes a difference, and that people will read. If that sounds something that is not achievable at the level that I'm at, let me know. I will go away and develop those skills and come back to you for when I'm ready. Be grateful if you told me what those skills were so I can develop them. otherwise I'm not here to waste a year of my time or your time in doing research for the sake of doing research, just so I can say I have an honours degree and add it to my CV. I want this to matter. And I was honestly expecting him to say, no, like, this is insane. Like, people work their whole lives and don't get the impact that you're after. Like, who is this undergraduate kid? But what he said in response is, I expect nothing less. And I don't think he even remembers this. I can say it's Professor Daniel Rezelbash. But that moment there taught me a lesson that no one is ever too small. There is no such thing as a hierarchy, first of all, and that no one is ever insignificant or small to not have a good idea. Everyone is capable of making a difference if they want to, and that's an important lesson. It's just the law can be quite hierarchical. I want to dismantle those hierarchies, because often some of the best ideas come from the most unexpected places and the most unexpected people.
Also, such a beautiful sentiment to hear subjectively, in the sense we talked about during your studies. You were grappling with a lot of, am I meant to be here? All these problems. To hear something like that coming from someone you looked up to, is exactly the inspiration you were kind of needing in that moment.
Absolutely.
So we've focused a lot on academia in this conversation so far, but as far as I'm aware, you weren't always in academia, so this must have been a pivot at some point. Do you mind talking about your career trajectory from completing your studies at university?
Yes. The same, and I think this is a nice segue. Another piece of advice, my supervisor, then supervisor, now supervisor, forever supervisor, he said, cast your net wide. Do not rule anything out. Try everything. And in the back of my mind, I still had this question of, like, for example, like, do I even belong in practicing law? Is that an opportunity? If that question really, that the volume of that question was dimmed, but it was still in the back of my mind. But what happened was I landed a paralegal job, and that, as I graduated, turned into a law graduate position, and I went into the world of commercial law. Having told you about all of this narrative about wanting to make a difference, and corporate law makes a massive difference. But the trajectory or the story that I've told you up until now sort of seems at odds with the decisions that I made in joining a purely commercial law firm to do commercial law. In fact, I was heading down the pathway of being a tax lawyer. But I think I needed to do that. Firstly, to provide actual evidence. Like, the only way you can conquer some of these doubts is meet it with objective evidence. You did it. You proved to yourself, not to anyone else. No one has ever told you don't belong here, but you proved to yourself that you do belong here and that you can do this work as well. So, had I not done that, I don't think I would have been so sure of myself with the decisions that I've made since. And whilst I'm not in corporate law anymore, I'm still forever grateful and really enjoyed a lot of the experiences that I had there and the lessons that I learnt during my very short stint as a junior lawyer.
It does seem that a lot of people tell you when you're in your early career, your early mid-20s, a lot of what you should be doing is trying to quell the what ifs. If you'd never gone into commercial law, there might have been a question in the back of your mind of, maybe it would have fit really well. Maybe I could have been excellent and I would have enjoyed it. Had you not had this experience, that would probably always be there and sour what is otherwise like a beautiful career that you've got now.
When you have the opportunity to try different experiences and try things and take risks, you should absolutely do that. The more you try and the more you experiment and expose yourself to new environments and situations, the more you develop. and the more you know what it is that you want to know. But there comes a point where you don't have that opportunity to do that. And I think even in those circumstances, there will always be a what if. What if I had done this? What if I had done that? And the simple answer is you will never know. And you just need to make a decision and make the next decision after that based on the information that is in front of you. And we're all doing our best with the information that we have. And leaving the what ifs aside is that you will never know how that pathway panned out. And we often want to romanticize the what if. What if I had done this? And then we go down this romantic pathway of how that could have been such a great opportunity. Or I mean, you can realistically play that narrative quite a negative way of what if I had taken that opportunity and it had completely failed as well. But we have this bias in our minds and the way it works. When we think about these what ifs, is that we tend to see them with quite rosy colored glasses.
Yeah, there's very few red lights in the what if. Usually everything's going well when you're hypothesizing what could have been.
And the what ifs often come at difficult moments in the pathway you've chosen now. The what ifs never emerge, I find, for me at least, when things are going well.
Yeah, when you're in your flow state and everything's going well, then you're laser focused on where you are.
Absolutely.
You mentioned the sort of career trajectory that it seemed like you would have at university, and then it feeling a little out of place when you're in commercial law and corporate law. Did you kind of have a sense that the narrative wasn't concluding how it should at the time?
At the back of my mind, it was sometimes I would question of this is not what you originally had intended to do. This is not why you studied the law. But at the same time, it was like giving yourself the space of being like you're figuring it out, and it's like I enjoyed it. I obviously enjoyed the work, and it's okay to enjoy the work that you do, even though it's not directly related to the particular issues that you're wanting to solve. And I realized through that experience is I actually really enjoy problem solving. And that component of service, you're still serving people. You're still doing really important work. You are problem solving for clients. You are solving real world issues that people are impacted by, businesses, employees are impacted by, and they are still as valid as any other issue. I'm not here to by all means think of this in a binary term of here are the social justice advocates and here are the corporate lawyers. No, I think the practice and the way we think about the law is about problem solving and providing a service. This is a service vocation. I don't want to call it a job. It's not a job. It's a vocation that is dedicated to solving problems for people in need. Now, what those problems are and who those people are is what defines the area that you're most interested in. And no one of them, what I'm trying to say, no one of them is more worthy of our attention or less worthy of our attention. It doesn't work like that. It's just how it matches to your own personality and what areas you're interested in. And I happen to be interested in numerous things, including refugee law and including the puzzle that is taxation law as well. So it wasn't certainly one or the other, or that one is, the stereotypes that come with either or. I want to make sure that I'm clear that I reject those binary terms, because if the moment you pigeonhole someone as being this particular thing, or put them in a box of they are a corporate lawyer that is not interested in anything else, that sort of shuts the conversation down of, you have capacity to do pro bono work and help the community, or you have the opportunity within your own space to do something. And vice versa is if you just consider me as this, again, the negative stereotypes that come across there is, it sort of stops conversations and it stops us from considering how we are very much doing the same work, but just for different people. And there is a much richer conversation there that can be had about it.
I often say as well, how many times have you changed someone's mind by yelling at them too?
Yes.
Often people just dig their heels in when you
Yes.
take these sort of binary stances. You're this team, I'm that team. Yeah, it just completely defeats the purpose of trying to resolve the problem together.
And if we're truly lawyers, we are, like, I'm a nerd. Like, it's fascinating, like, all these different areas of the law and how they've emerged and how they operate in practice. These are all really rich discussions to be had. It's a vocation, and it's just a strange but like way to think about it is with these distinctions. But I think I may have gone off topic here a little bit.
This show is made for rabbit holes, so it's very welcome. Coming back to your career in commercial law, you talked about the gratitude you had for the experience at the time. When did you know that you'd probably squeezed out enough from that experience and it was time to move on? How did you know that there wasn't more for you there?
There were a few different factors that were going on. There wasn't a real light bulb moment of this is probably time for you to exit or time for you to jump into doing a PhD, which is a complete 360-degree turn. At face value, I don't actually think it is. I think, again, if you take my view of it, of how they're all really similar and linked, I can explain to you the linkages between a PhD and taxation law and connect it, at least the way my brain works. But I think one component of it was the research that I had done in my undergraduate final year had received considerable attention in the media, and I had worked to get it published, and I had started to realize just how important and novel of an idea that was, and how much that idea has been left underexplored, and how much more there is left to say, and how much I really wanted to say on that topic, which is what's turned into my PhD. So there was that desire there. There was this personal question of, are these the problems and are these the issues that you are most interested in solving? Yes, I'm enjoying it, but am I playing it safe? Is this really what you want to do? And there was particular experiences within practice, and certainly not indicative of the entire place of employment that I was working at. But there was particular instances where I thought perhaps this is not the environment or the people that I want to continue working for. And when all of these sort of ideas and experiences had come together, arose an opportunity for me to do a PhD as well. So it was essentially a fusion of these different experiences and thoughts that had come to light across maybe a year or so period, where then I made a decision. I don't think for me there was no light bulb moment of, right, I'm deciding to on a whim quit my job, resign my job, take a massive salary cut and go into the world of academia.
Which is probably indicative of a sound decision. You probably don't want any career decisions, especially with that sort of gravity, to be spur of the moment. I'm doing it. It's probably good that it's many different competing factors building together over a slow, considered process.
And I think at the time it seemed like a really massive decision, or a really monumental decision, but I think a friend of mine always reminds me, it's like life is not as serious as it initially appears at that moment. I think looking back on it, it's like corporate law is still an option for me. I still am a practicing lawyer that can return to corporate law. So it's not like it's not one or the other. It's not you're definitely this and you're definitely not that either. So it seemed like a monumental decision of walking away from this career and this opportunity to do something that is unknown or less guaranteed or risky. But at the same time, in reality, it really isn't. I can come back and be your colleague and work for you one day, Zach. It's like you can always go back. Like these decisions aren't as existential as you originally thought they would be often.
I guess it only makes sense the decisions we make in the moment are right in front of us. It's when all of our emotions and subjectivity is tied to them. So naturally they feel like the stakes are much higher than all the decisions I made last month or a year ago.
Yes, absolutely.
Whereas in reality, that time passes and it's going to feel just the same as all the other decisions you made.
Yeah.
And it all makes sense in the story of your life. Everything makes sense in hindsight.
And it's not to invalidate those feelings, or it was a big decision for me at that point in time. It doesn't invalidate that process, and it's important to think things carefully and to think it through as well. And so we can look back at it and I can explain it to you like this in hindsight, but at the same time, I mean, you go through these issues again in the present moment, despite having those experiences, I think you still feel the way you feel. So it's not to invalidate that experience for sure as well.
There was one thing about your career that I wanted to zoom in on. You mentioned of the competing considerations that caused you to pivot out of commercial law. You mentioned the sort of the atmosphere and the people you were working with at the time. If you don't mind, I'd love to sort of unpack that a little bit and sort of gauge what the experience was, what was sort of rubbing you the wrong way.
Absolutely. And when I speak about this, I speak about it from the position of my own experience, not necessarily indicative of anyone else's experience or legal practice in general or the nature of practicing law. So I don't want this to be used as or perceived as a broad brush of the law is this way. It was indicative of my experience at a particular point in time, at a particular place. So very individualized in that sense. But I think starting big picture, I looked around and I could count maybe on one hand, two hands tops, the number of people of color at this particular firm, national firm, big firm. And I could see again, and this might be indicative of my own insecurities coming into it. I told you that I already felt like the prestige of this law, the exclusivity of law made me feel like I do not belong. And then when I entered into that workforce and I looked around, there were not many people that looked like me, not many people that were from my own cultural background, for example. And there was experiences of racism at the firm, of comments made directly at me, made at other peers that I observed, and the way in which I looked at that, and then initially I thought it sort of reinforced these thoughts and concerns that I had in the back of my mind of like, you don't belong in this place. But as I got more confident in that firm, and I put this down to beautiful mentors that I had in that firm that really instilled this sense of self-belief. They believed in me at a time where I didn't believe in myself back then. As I grew more confident, I said, well, you have a few options here of staying silent, like everyone else has been doing, and really creating this snowball effect of, well, you stay silent and you climb this hierarchy, and then someone else experiences it. But ultimately for me, it's the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. And that I didn't really feel like I could be a part of a legal profession or career that tolerated racism or tolerated that sort of behavior. So I decided to provide feedback. I provided feedback to the firm, and that was addressed essentially. I will never forget this. The response to it was, next time this happens again, you should raise it with the person directly. I will never forget that sentence. Assuming that next time, there will be a next time that it does happen. The
inevitability, the next time.
And when it does happen, we don't want to hear about it at all.
Yeah.
So I just observed these responses. They're the negative sides of this. But in going through that, I also told other people in the firm about this. And there were beautiful people that stood behind me, stood beside me, and advocated for me as well in that process. So it's easy to look at this as quite a negative experience, or to paint it with a broad brush of negativity. But I think it was a beautiful experience where I grew in that experience. I learned how to advocate for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I learned what values that were non-negotiables for me, what values that I would not let anyone walk over or breach. It also taught me that to avoid black and white thinking, that everything is bad or everyone thinks the same. It's important to give opportunity to people to also prove you wrong when you have those thoughts, to allow people the opportunity to show up for you and to support you as well. And I learned that there is a beautiful community when you do actually ask for support, that is there. And at the same time, we still have a long way to go. If I can speak in broad terms, we have a long way to go in the law. It has certainly gotten better. And there is important work being done by a lot of people in the profession to make it more inclusive for women, make it more inclusive for the LGBTQIA plus community, Indigenous people of color. The law is becoming a more inclusive place, and we can acknowledge the developments that have been made, whilst at the same time acknowledging these particular instances. My experience, I'm sure I'm not alone in this, in experiencing this. I'm sure this still occurs across different levels in the legal profession today. We are making progress, but there is still so much more work to do. But coming back, I mean, I've gone quite down another rabbit hole. That experience in that particular moment, for me, at that particular time, I had quite a strong emotional reaction to it. And it left a bitter taste in my mouth after that. And it did get me thinking of maybe this I don't belong here. Maybe I don't feel included in this. And to what extent that shaped my decision, I think I was always going to veer into not necessarily academia, but veer into some pathway that looks very similar to the pathway that I'm on. But that also did shape a little bit of my decision making at that particular time. But yeah, I walk away from it grateful. It's a weird thing to say, but also I think if you're listening to this podcast, knowing that these experiences do not define who we are, they're more a reflection of that particular person at that particular point in time, and that if you want to see an inclusive, diverse legal profession, you have to step up and contribute to it, despite it being difficult as well. And that belongs to everyone. Everyone has an ownership of critically thinking about what is the environment and what is the profession, the vocation, what is it that we stand for, and what actions are we going to take to make sure that we are one step closer to realizing that vision. So I don't want people to suddenly think or hear about my story and be dissuaded from pursuing the law, because the law has given and opened up so many rich opportunities for me as well. And the negatives, the positives far outweigh any of the negative experiences. And in fact, the negative experiences have only shaped and enriched my experience as well.
The gratitude is such a interesting theme to take from that experience, and I find it really powerful in the sense when you can practice and exercise gratitude, make it an instinct in response to the worst experiences that you might face. It's interesting in the sense that it can turn anything into a positive. Suddenly, nothing can sort of shake you or rattle to you an extent that you can't recover from it, because when something good happens, of course, I'm grateful for that. When something bad happens, I can learn from it. Suddenly you become impenetrable and nothing can sort of break you.
Absolutely. And I don't want to give you the illusion that I have somehow mastered the art and the power that gratitude brings. I think I still struggle with this myself as well. It is not perfect. And sometimes there are really negative experiences that there is no silver lining for as well. And I think it's important to acknowledge and validate those experiences as well. But yes, gratitude for me plays a big role in my life as well. And I try and practice it. I try and think about ways in which I can reframe things from a gratitude perspective. That is a very powerful tool that I believe in. Yes.
If it's all the same, I'll probably still call this episode Mastering the Art of Gratitude.
I love it. I love it.
One final question. You've been immensely generous with your time here tonight. I'm sure you expected this question given the nature of the show, but what I like to ask all of my guests is, why do you think everybody hates lawyers?
It's a great question. And it's one that I was thinking about when I came to do this podcast. And I think it won't be a surprise based on the discussions that we've had on theme, is the law, and let's separate the practice of the law and the law itself. The law can be and has been and is a tool of exclusion. Not always, but it certainly has been and can be and is a tool of exclusion for certain people. And the practice of the law in upholding these laws and policies and how this structure operates can be seen to be exclusionary as well. And of course, this can generate hate. I mean, hate is a strong word, but it can generate those sort of negative views about lawyers as well. And internally, the lawyers can be seen from the outside quite stereotypical as people that are gatekeepers of knowledge, people that speak a foreign language that we don't understand. We get taught the power and the importance of plain English and using plain English writing. The reason why we're trying to instill plain English in our education is because we want to combat this accessibility issue. When we use language that is overtly complex, overly complex, I should say, what that does is it creates barriers of exclusion of who is able to access and understand the law, where in fact the law and justice by its nature is for everyone.
It's you must abide by these rules you don't understand.
Yes.
Fundamentally contradictory.
So I think it's both a stereotype and perhaps a reflection of more work needing to be done. But I would say everybody hates lawyers because we are often perceived to be a prestigious exclusionary club. But I don't think that's true. But yeah, that's why I think everyone hates lawyers.
I was going to say, as a teacher, seeing the new generation coming into, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of the law?
I think that's a whole nother podcast.
That's how I get you back for a second episode.
I am both optimistic and hopeful, but I also see the use of generative AI coming through in students' work and assignments. I think generative AI is a very powerful and useful tool that will reshape the way we practice, think, and study about the law. But I don't think the students are well equipped yet to be using the technology. They do not have the skills to use it, and I see it in writing all the time. I detect it in writing more often than I'm sure a few have gone past me, but I detect it, and that worries me that we might be backpedaling on the important skills that we need as lawyers as well. So there is both a case of optimism and concern, but it's just the way we respond to it that will shape how the future looks.
I guess that's your teaser for the next episode we have with Keyvan. Thank you once again so much for your time. You've been very generous, and I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I think producer Paddy did as well, and I hope everyone else does too.
How did I do?
I think you did fantastic. You kept talking about oh, rabbit holes. I'm like, no, that's the juice. We want that. That's where all the fun is.